I'm Brenda, a 30-year-old single person who finds it difficult to find love. I needed a night out after splitting up with my unfaithful ex, and Lisa's party looked like the ideal getaway. Away from drama, my existence is fairly straightforward. I own a small, elegant boutique in the city where I sell designer clothing to customers who don't bother to check price tags. As I entered Lisa's crowded apartment, the noise of the crowd and the music were so loud that I could not hear my own thoughts. Lisa excitedly grabbed my arm as I was surveying a peaceful area and grabbing a drink. "Brenda, you succeeded. Look, I want you to get to know this person. Finance stuff and all that, he's right up your alley," she exclaimed over the music as she pulled me through the crowd of revelers. Before I realized it, I was grinning cheekily in front of a tall guy. He gave off the impression of someone who was confident in his wealth and wouldn't hesitate to share it with you. "This is Nathan, Brenda." Lisa gave us a wink and said, "Nathan, meet Brenda. She owns the choicest clothing store downtown." Before I could object, Lisa departed. Nathan gave me a hard handshake and a questioning look. A clothes store? Really? Such sounds like a great time. "I work in finance myself, doing corporate investments and all that kind of stuff," he continued in a smooth, assured voice. "Indeed is fantastic. I get to meet a lot of interesting folks," I said, trying not to roll my eyes as I took a sip of my drink. Talking business was the last thing I wanted to do. "So why haven't I seen you around earlier?" "A stunning woman like you, I wouldn't forget," he said, drawing nearer than necessary. I stepped back and arched an eyebrow, likely due to the fact that I spend more time examining fabric samples than attending financial galas. "What is your narrative?" "Big deals and all the numbers." He let out a real, hearty laugh. "Quite a bit. I'm off work tonight, so it's not as glamorous as it seems." "What do you think is the worst thing about having your own company?" "Inventory days and holiday returns," I said, finding myself becoming more receptive to the conversation. "And you? What catches you off guard in the finance industry?" "Rules and the never-ending paperwork." "Anyway, enough about work. What are your hobbies?" With a deceptive smile, Nathan inquired. I was talking to a finance guy at a loud party about things I hadn't planned to talk about, like my love of vintage jazz recordings and thrift store excursions. Nathan was truly involved in the conversation, asking questions and giving personal anecdotes on where to discover the best music venues in the city. He wasn't just listening. The party was coming to an end before I realized how quickly the evening had gone. Nathan turned to face me, then back to his watch. I had no idea that I would talk to someone so fascinating for the entire evening. "Can I see you once more?" I wavered, memories of our recent breakup racing through my head. "I'm not really looking to jump into anything new," I said. "No demands. To put it mildly, it will include exchanging more music and possibly even some coffee." He made a suggestion. "I know of a restaurant that hosts live jazz on weekends." It was like entering a vortex of jazz concerts and spontaneous city walks when I started dating Nathan. Even though I had told him right away that I wasn't seeking to become serious about anything, our time together seemed to erode my resolve a little bit each day. We had been dating for a while. Fall was beginning to bite, and one evening Nathan called and said, "Hey Brenda, put on that fancy red dress you love so much. I'm going to surprise you." "As long as the surprise involves some decent food, you've got yourself a deal," I said, curious. "I'm going hungry." He laughed. "Trust me, you'll want to be there." We crossed paths outside my shop. He appeared as though he had just stepped out of a magazine as he leaned against his automobile. As he opened the passenger door for me, he said, "Ready for that surprise?" He kept the whereabouts a secret while we traveled, entertaining me with constant banter that made me feel both relaxed and a little nervous. To last, we arrived to a quaint little jazz club downtown, the kind with few tables and dim lighting. We followed the host to a private area close to the stage. But Nathan's focus was entirely on me, not the band. He leaned in and whispered, "Brenda, I know you said you wanted things light, but I've got to be honest with you." Midway during a melancholic saxophone solo. Oh yeah. As I took a taste of my drink, my heart began to beat faster. Honest about what? About this. He extracted a tiny velvet box from inside his jacket. When he opened it, a tasteful, understated ring caught the gentle light. "Brenda, I adore you so much. I want to do more than simply hang around and go on dates. I'm craving more. With you, I want everything. Are you going to marry me?" I remained silent for a while. His sincere and optimistic expression was all that was visible as the music gradually faded away. That's when my pragmatic side came out. "This is huge, Nathan. You are aware of my fear of plunging back into the depths." I know. He grabbed my hand in a hurry to comfort me. "But consider this. We work really well together. You chuckle at my jokes. We both can't dance to save our lives. And I act as though I understand art because you do. What more is required?" In spite of myself, I laughed. Maybe a bit more practice on the dance floor. Anything with a smile. So what do you say? I did want this, us, a future, everything, as I looked into his eyes. At last I responded, yes, feeling more at ease saying it than I had anticipated. "Yes, I'll marry you." After Nathan put the ring on my finger, we celebrated the only way we knew how. By staying late into the night, discussing everything and nothing, and beginning to plan our next trip together. The next day, Nathan was eager to introduce me to his mother, Mrs. Harper. We met for brunch at a quaint little cafe she loved. Right off the bat, Mrs. Harper was all smiles and open arms. "Oh, Brenda, I'm so thrilled Nathan found someone like you. I just know we're going to be great friends," she said as we settled into our seats. She began chatting away, filling me in on all the little details of Nathan's life. "You know, he absolutely loves lasagna. I must give you my recipe. And if you really want to spoil him, make him his favorite chocolate pecan pie. He's just like his father, can't resist a good pie." The brunch went by in a blur of laughter and shared stories, making me feel a little more part of Nathan's world, a world I was slowly but surely starting to love. It had been quite the reveal taking Nathan to the house where I grew up. It's this big old place that looks like it came straight out of a storybook, all thanks to my dad's knack for playing the stock exchange. When we pulled up in the driveway, Nathan's eyes popped out of his head. "Wow, this place is incredible," he exclaimed, looking around like a kid in a candy store. "Yeah, Dad's done well for himself," I said, trying to play it cool, even though I was proud of where I came from. Inside, Nathan was polite, but I caught him more than once checking out the finer details of the house's decor and the art on the walls, even asking my dad about some of the antiques. It wasn't all bad, though. My parents seemed to like him, especially when Dad and Nathan started talking money and investments. My mom pulled me aside while the guys chatted. "He seems like a good man, Brenda," she whispered, squeezing my hand. "Very attentive, isn't he?" "Yeah, he's great." I smiled, though part of me wondered if his interest was more in the lifestyle my family had than in me. I shook off the feeling, not wanting to judge too harshly too soon. Later, as we were leaving, Nathan couldn't stop talking about the house. "One day, I'd love a place like this. Imagine the parties I could throw, the people I'd host," he mused, already daydreaming. I nudged him lightly, bringing him back to earth. You mean the kind of home we could build for our kids, right? Of course, that's what I meant, he corrected quickly with a sheepish grin. Our kids would love it, wouldn't they? Definitely, I agreed, though his initial comment lingered in my mind longer than I wanted it to. Fast forward to today, our wedding day, and all those jitters and doubts seemed trivial compared to the joy of the moment. We decided on a simple ceremony at a local garden. It was intimate, just close family and friends, no big spectacle. As I walked down the aisle, seeing Nathan waiting for me, all my worries melted away. His smile was all I needed to reassure me of our future together. After we were declared husband and wife, the celebration began. It was laid back, just how we wanted it. We danced, laughed, and enjoyed the company of our loved ones. During the reception, my dad clinked his glass for a toast. To Brenda and Nathan, may your life together be as beautiful and enduring as this day. Remember, the best things in life aren't things. They're the moments and memories you create together. As the party carried on into the evening, I felt a profound sense of contentment. Whatever uncertainties the future held, we were ready to face them together. I was ready to face them. With Nathan by my side, life after the wedding was a whirlwind. Nathan and I were settling into married life, adjusting to each other's habits and routines when we were hit with a curveball. My dad, who had always been the pillar of strength in our family, got sick, really sick. It was cancer, and it came out of nowhere, or so it seemed. We spent a lot of time at the hospital, and during one of those visits, Dad decided to have a heart-to-heart with me. Nathan was there too, fetching coffee down the hall. When he returned, he found us whispering seriously and sat down, his face etched with concern. "Brenda, there's something important I need to tell you," Dad said, his voice weaker than I remembered it ever being. He took a deep breath, grasping for every bit of strength he could muster. "I've made some decisions about the estate. You're going to inherit $3 million. The room felt silent for a moment, even with the constant beeps and murmurs of the hospital around us. I didn't know what to say. It was a lot of money, a life-changing amount. Nathan, who had just sat down with the coffees, almost choked on his drink. "Wow, that's a lot of money," he stammered, trying to keep his composure. I could see the wheels turning in his head, and something in his expression shifted. It was subtle, but it was there, a flicker of something that wasn't just surprise. It looked a lot like calculation. "Yeah, it's a big responsibility," I responded, feeling suddenly very tired. "It's not just about the money. It's about keeping Dad's legacy alive, making sure we manage everything responsibly." Dad nodded, looking relieved that I understood the weight of his decision. "I trust you, Brenda. You know what's important." Nathan quickly added, "Of course, we'll take care of everything, sir. It's what's best for our future, right, Brenda?" I noticed the weight in his statement and felt a twinge of discomfort. This was suddenly about us, not just me. "Yeah, sure," I said, but my mind was racing. This wasn't how I wanted this conversation to go. After that day, things changed. Nathan started talking more about investments, real estate, things we could do with the inheritance. One night over dinner, he brought it up again. "So I was thinking about the money," he began, not wasting any time. "We should start looking into some properties, maybe even consider some high-yield investments." I was pushing my food around my plate, not really hungry anymore. "Nathan, can we slow down a bit? This isn't just free cash to throw around. It's my dad's hard-earned money. We need to be careful, think things through." He looked a bit taken aback, but recovered quickly. "Of course, I get that. I just think it's a good opportunity to grow our assets, make sure we're set for the future." The words hung in the air, heavy and a bit too presumptuous for my taste. Yeah, I know, but let's just handle one thing at a time. Okay. My dad's still here, and that's what matters now. Nathan nodded, but the eager glint in his eye didn't match his agreeable tone. Sure, Brenda, whatever you think is best. The weeks following Dad's passing were some of the hardest I'd ever lived through. The world seemed to move on, but I was stuck, my grief a constant shadow. Nathan and his mom, Mrs. Harper, were around a lot, supposedly to help out. One night, their true colors showed through in a way that rocked me to my core. It was late, and I couldn't sleep. Too many thoughts, too much sadness. Mrs. Harper had been all sweet and comforting, hovering around me with hot teas and sympathetic smiles. Brenda, dear, you look exhausted. Why don't you take one of these sleeping pills? It'll help you rest, she suggested, holding out a small pill. Okay, I'll do that, I muttered, not keen on the idea. I didn't want to miss a moment. I didn't want to blur the edges of my memories of Dad with drug-induced sleep. She shrugged, placing the pill on the kitchen counter. I'll be in the living room if you need anything. I nodded, pretending to head to my room, but something felt off. Curiosity, or maybe intuition, nudged me to stay awake, to listen. I crept back towards the living room, the floor cold under my feet, my heart pounding in the silence. Their voices were hushed but heated. I paused at the edge of the room, hidden by the darkness. Are you sure she took sleeping pills? She's been so stubborn lately. Nathan's voice was frustrated and sharp. Mrs. Harper's reply was smooth like honey. Give it time. She's vulnerable, grieving. Now's our chance to get things moving. That money should be in your account, not just sitting there. Yeah, and soon. I'm tired of playing the supportive husband. Once we get the cash, I can finally move on, maybe find someone younger, more fun. The air in my lungs froze, my heart skipped beats. This was not the man I married. This was a stranger speaking so coldly, so calculatingly. His mother chuckled, a sound that sent shivers down my spine. Just make sure I get my share. A new house, perhaps. That cute little convertible we saw the other day. Of course, Mom, you'll get whatever you want. Brenda's too dumb to figure it out before we clean her out. I felt sick, my hands trembling. How could I have been so blind? The love, the marriage, it was all a setup. Quiet as a shadow, I backed away, needing space to think, to breathe. I went to my room, locked the door, and sat on the bed, my mind racing. They were plotting against me, planning to strip me of everything. Morning came, and I acted as though nothing had happened. At breakfast, Nathan and his mother exchanged glances, their smiles too sharp, too knowing. Nathan brought up the inheritance again. Brenda, we really should start thinking about that investment. It's what your dad would have wanted for us to secure our future. His words made my stomach turn, but I kept my face neutral, my voice calm. I'll think about it, Nathan. Let's see what the lawyers say about the best way to handle everything. The days following my father's funeral were some of the hardest I'd ever had to pretend through. I played the part of the devastated daughter to a T, all while watching Nathan and his mother make plans for a future funded by my inheritance. His mother wasn't even trying to hide it anymore, openly browsing for new houses and cars on her laptop in the living room, as if the money was already hers. Meanwhile, Nathan was barely home. He stayed late at work, came home later than usual, and even when he was around, he was glued to his phone. One evening, as he was taking a shower, his phone buzzed on the nightstand next to our bed. Without thinking, I glanced at the screen and saw a message pop up from some woman. It wasn't just friendly, it was flirty. I felt a weird mix of anger and relief. Anger because of the betrayal, but relief because it just proved what I already knew. A cheater in one part of life is a cheater in all parts. That weekend, I told Nathan I needed to clear my head and visit my mom. He barely looked up from his phone, just nodded and mumbled something about taking all the time I needed. Driving to my mom's place felt like escaping a prison. As soon as I saw her, the weight of everything started to lift. I told her everything. The overheard conversation, Nathan's late nights, the messages. I laid it all out. Mom was curious at first. That rotten scoundrel. She exploded, pacing the kitchen, playing happy families while plotting behind her back. But then her anger turned to laughter, a deep rolling laugh that filled the kitchen. Oh, Brenda, they think they're so clever, but they've got another thing coming. Just wait until the wills read. They won't know what hit them. Her confidence was infectious. For the first time since that awful night, I felt like maybe things would turn out all right. So we just wait. That's it. That's it, she confirmed. Let them make their plans. They're building castles in the air, and we're about to bring them right down to the ground. Back at home, Nathan was exactly where I left him, phone in hand, probably texting that woman. But I didn't care anymore. I had something they didn't, a plan and the truth on my side. I went to bed that night, not with a heart heavy with dread, but with a spark of strategy and the anticipation of justice soon to be served. The day to read my dad's will finally arrived, and you could cut the tension in the lawyer's office with a knife. Nathan and his mom were practically buzzing with excitement, thinking they were about to become filthy rich. I sat there, feeling like I was about to watch a show, knowing full well what the finale would be, thanks to my mom's hint. We all gathered in the small, stuffy office, the air thick with anticipation. Nathan kept glancing at his watch, and his mom was tapping her foot nonstop. You'd think they were waiting for a lottery draw the way they were carrying on. The lawyer, Mr. Jenkins, cleared his throat and opened the thick folder in front of him. Thank you all for coming today. As per Mr. Thompson's wishes, I will now read the last will and testament. Nathan leaned forward, practically on the edge of his seat. His mom whispered, "Here we go," under her breath, rubbing her hands together like she was about to receive her birthday present. Mr. Jenkins began with the usual legal jargon, but soon got to the part everyone was waiting for. To my daughter Brenda, I leave the sum of $3 million. Nathan's mom let out a little squeal, and Nathan shot me a look that was meant to be comforting, but came off as smug. I just stared straight ahead, impassive. Mr. Jenkins continued, however, it must also be noted that along with this inheritance, there are debts incurred by Mr. Thompson amounting to $4 million. The room went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Nathan's face went from smug to shocked to pale in a matter of seconds. His mom was furious. This must be some mistake. We need to see the documents, the proof. Mr. Jenkins, ever the professional, started handing out copies of the financial statements and debt notices. Everything is documented here. If you have any questions, you can consult with your own legal advisor. As the reality of the situation sunk in, my mom stood up. Her voice was calm but carried across the room. Nathan, you need to understand. My husband had a weakness for gambling. He made debts, borrowed from people, from banks. I hope you'll be noble in this situation and help Brenda with these debts. It appeared as though Nathan and his mother had been struck. Their dismay soon gave way to indignation. Assist with debt payment? Do you really think this way? We are not reimbursed for any expenses we did not incur. Nathan's mother yelled, losing all pretense of decorum. Nathan disengaged just as quickly. Ellie, I want a divorce. In the divorce decree, we'll say that none of us is claiming any assets or money from the other. That concludes it. I felt a mixture of comfort and revulsion as I stared at him. All right, Nathan, I agree if that's what you want. We can prepare the divorce decree. My mother gave me a comforting grip and a reassuring gaze as they walked out of the office, dejected and furious. It will all work out, Brenda. It's best for us if they go. Following the execution of the divorce decree, Nathan and his mother were forced to reveal their actual selves one final time. They were snickering behind me as we were leaving the attorney's office. Nathan's mother grinned. Well, at least she will have $1 million in the hole, drowning in her father's debts now. Nathan chuckled and turned to face me. Well, Brenda, good luck handling that mess. I was laughing so hard I thought they were confused. Nathan scowled. What is the reason for your laughter? My mother intervened at that point, cool as always. Up until then, she had been silent and had only observed. Because you're completely wrong, Nathan. As you can see, I have always been in charge of handling our money. Bless his soul, your father-in-law wasn't the financial whiz that everyone believed him to be. Their arrogant looks wavered. What are you discussing? Nathan's mother lost it. With a hint of hardness in her eyes, my mother grinned. All of the profitable stock deals and investments were made by me. I am estimated to be worth $50 million. Brenda's inherited obligations are easily paid off by me. Nathan had a pale face. Are you serious? Are you for real? Yeah, Mom went on, and since I'm feeling generous, I've also decided to give Brenda a lovely home that she won't have to share with anyone, particularly not a gold digger. Their looks of disbelief were priceless. With his previous haughtiness gone, Nathan truly fell to his knees and stumbled, saying, Brenda, please, I didn't mean any of it. I was simply confused. I ignored him and his mother, who was still attempting to come to terms with the realization. I blocked their numbers from my phone as we were leaving. I didn't want to hear from them again after that. A few weeks later, word got around that Nathan was having problems. The BFFs were following him since his debts had finally caught up with him. He made an effort to connect, pleading for assistance through texts sent to pals in common. I remained steadfast. I told a friend to tell him I wish him the best of luck after he relayed his requests. That was the extent of my assistance to him.
I had always been an early riser. By the time 7:30 a.m. hit, I was usually up, mentally preparing myself for the day. But that day, just as I was getting up, my phone rang. It wasn't the usual work-related call or even one from a friend. It was Mark, my husband. Strange for him to call when he was just in the next room. I picked up. "Hello, Jessica," he stated without any warmth or greeting. "You need to move your stuff out of your room," he continued, his tone firm, almost as if this wasn't up for discussion. Confused, I sat up straighter in bed. "Why would I do that?" "It's my room," I replied. "Sarah needs it," Mark said. Sarah was Mark's niece, a 25-year-old who had lived a life of ease and reliance on others. She hadn't worked a day in her life, instead choosing to take from her grandparents and anyone else willing to give, including Mark. In her eyes, I was just the stupid auntie, a term she often used behind my back. Why does Sarah need my room? I tried to keep my voice steady, but it trembled with a mix of anger and disbelief. "She's moving in and she wants that room," Mark replied, his tone dismissive. "But that's where all my things are. Where am I supposed to go?" I could feel the sting of tears, but I held them back. "Just find another room or put them in storage. I don't know. Figure it out," Mark said. I was in shock. After everything I had done for this family, this is how he treated me. Our marriage wasn't perfect. In fact, we had been sleeping in separate rooms for a while now. But to be told to vacate my own space in my own home for a girl who had shown me nothing but disrespect was a new low. "Mark, I am not moving my things. That's final. I said firmly. There was a pause. We'll see about that, Mark replied, and with that, he hung up, leaving me rattled. I sat there for a few moments, trying to process what just happened. Our relationship had its issues, yes, but this blatant disregard for me, for our life together, was something I had never expected. As the weight of the situation settled in, I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't let this stand. Whatever game Mark and Sarah were playing, I had to be ready for it. This was my home, my space, and I wasn't going to be pushed around any longer. I walked through the front door after a grueling day at work, hoping for a moment of peace. But instead, I found Mark and Sarah sitting in the living room, their faces grim. It was clear that my refusal to give up my room had set things into motion. Sarah looked me up and down with a smirk, her arrogance palpable. "So I heard you don't want to give up your room," she said, her voice dripping with mock surprise. "That's right," I responded, my tone firm. "I live here. Sarah, that room is mine," Mark interjected, trying to play peacemaker. "Jessica, can't you just move your stuff to the guest room?" he pleaded. "Why should I? Why does she get my room?" I replied, looking from him to Sarah, who sat smugly, enjoying every moment of my discomfort. "Because she's family and she needs it," Mark answered, a hint of irritation creeping into his voice. "I'm your wife, Mark. Or have you forgotten that? I'm family too," I snapped back. Sarah laughed, her voice high-pitched and mocking. "Come on, Auntie Jessica, it's just a room. You can't be that attached to it." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my composure. "It's not about the room, Sarah. It's about respect. You can't just come in and demand things as if you own the place," I said firmly. She rolled her eyes. "You're making a big deal out of nothing. All you have to do is move your stuff. Is that so hard?" Mark intervened, raising his hand as if to silence us. "Jessica, just move your stuff. This isn't worth the fight," he pleaded. I stared at him in disbelief. He was my husband. He should have been on my side. Instead, he was sitting with a niece who had repeatedly shown disdain for both him and me. I felt betrayed. "Mark, I won't be bullied into giving up my space. Not by you, not by her," I said, pointing at Sarah. "This is our home, and I deserve to be treated with respect." Sarah laughed again. "Respect? From what I've seen, you don't deserve any." I was taken aback by her audacity. "Sarah, you might think you can walk over everyone, but not me. I won't be pushed around," I said with as much dignity as I could muster. Mark sighed, rubbing his temples as if the weight of the world was on his shoulders. "This is getting us nowhere. Just move your stuff, Jessica," he said. I shook my head. "No, I won't." The atmosphere in the room grew tense, the three of us locked in a standoff, each waiting for the other to blink. The only sound was the ticking of the clock on the wall. Finally, Sarah stood up, her face red with anger. "Fine, keep your stupid room. But this isn't over," she spat, and with that, she stormed out, leaving me and Mark in an uncomfortable silence. I could tell this was only the beginning of our troubles. The next morning, as I prepared my morning coffee, my phone buzzed with a notification, a text message from an unknown number. I opened it, curious. "You should have given me that room. You'll regret crossing me," it read. A cold shiver ran down my spine. I knew instantly who it was from. "Sarah," I replied, trying to keep my cool. "You don't scare me, Sarah. This is my house, and you can't dictate what happens here." Almost instantly, her reply came in. "This isn't over, Auntie Jessica. You have no idea what I'm capable of." Just as I was trying to process this new threat, Mark walked into the kitchen. He looked tired, dark circles under his eyes. "What's wrong?" I asked, showing him the messages. He looked at the screen for a long moment. "She's just upset. Don't let her get to you," he said. I frowned. "This isn't just being upset, Mark. She's threatening me in our own home." He sighed. "I'll talk to her. But you have to understand, she's had a tough life. Losing her parents at a young age wasn't easy. I interrupted him. That doesn't give her the right to behave this way. She's an adult, not a child. Mark looked away, clearly torn between supporting me and defending Sarah. I'll handle it, okay? But the conversation was far from over. That evening, as I was settling into my room, Sarah knocked on the door. I opened it, and she stood there, her posture defiant, eyes cold. Listen, Auntie Jessica, I don't know why you're making things difficult. Just give me the room, and all of this can be over, she said. I took a deep breath. I told you, Sarah, this is my room, my house. You can't come in here and make demands. I replied firmly. She smirked. Maybe not, but I can make life very difficult for you. I looked her straight in the eye. Is that a threat? Sarah leaned in, her voice a low whisper. Consider it a warning. And with that, she turned on her heel and walked away. Sleep didn't come easy that night. The weight of Sarah's warning pressed on me. What was she planning? What was she capable of? And why was Mark so blind to her manipulations? The only thing I knew for sure was that I had to be prepared. Whatever Sarah had in store, I wasn't going down without a fight. Days melded into weeks, and each day seemed grayer than the one before. The walls of the house felt suffocating, and Sarah's smug demeanor was a constant thorn in my side. From leaving unwashed dishes in the sink to borrowing items without asking, she seemed intent on testing my patience. But nothing could have prepared me for the horror that awaited me on one fateful evening. Returning home from work, I immediately sensed something was amiss. The usually locked front door stood slightly ajar. Hesitantly, I pushed it open, half expecting to find a robbery in progress. The living room was untouched, but a trail of torn fabric leading upstairs caught my attention. Swallowing the lump in my throat, I followed the trail to my bedroom. The sight that greeted me was heart-wrenching. My clothes, years of curated outfits, gifts, and personal memories, all cut up and strewn carelessly around. The violation of my personal space was a feeling I couldn't describe. Jessica, what did you do? I heard Mark's voice behind me, dripping with accusation. What did I do? I turned, a mix of disbelief and anger. Your niece did this. Sarah appeared beside him, feigning innocence. Why would I ruin your things, Auntie Jessica? Maybe you did this for attention. Mark looked at me, his gaze colder than I'd ever seen. Did you do this, Jessica? Did you ruin your clothes to frame Sarah? My jaw dropped. You think I would destroy my own things, my cherished memories? Mark's voice grew harsher. Maybe you wanted a reason to kick Sarah out. My heart felt like it was shattering. The man I had once loved and confided in now looked at me like a stranger. I can't believe you'd think that of me, I whispered. Sarah smirked from behind Mark, enjoying every moment of my pain. Maybe you should have just given me the room. None of this would have happened. I backed away, tears streaming down my face. I thought we were a team, Mark. How could you choose her over me? Mark's face was impassive. Maybe if you'd been more understanding, none of this would have happened. You brought this on yourself, he said. The weight of his words was crushing. It was clear I had lost not only my clothes, but also my partner. The realization was devastating. That night, I packed a bag, knowing I couldn't stay in a house where I felt so alone and betrayed. I had lost the battle for the room, but the war for my dignity was just beginning. The weight of the past few weeks felt like 100 bricks pressing down on my chest. Every look, every word exchanged in that house, they all came rushing back. With my bag packed, I sat in the living room, the silence only interrupted by the ticking of the grandfather clock as I waited for a taxi. The realization hit me. This wasn't just about a room, my clothes, or even Sarah. It was about respect, trust, and my place in this family. My phone buzzed, a call from Lisa, my best friend. Hey, Jess, she said, her voice filled with concern. I heard what happened. Are you okay? I don't know, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. I feel so lost, Lisa. I never thought Mark would turn on me like this. Lisa sighed. Sometimes people show their true colors when faced with difficult situations. Maybe this was a wake-up call. You're right, I murmured. But what am I going to do now? I've invested so much in this relationship and this house. You need to make a decision for yourself, Lisa advised. For your well-being and your future. Don't let anyone else dictate your worth. Lisa's words resonated deep within me. Mark's parents and Sarah had taken so much from me already. My peace, my happiness, and even my own space. But they couldn't take my self-worth unless I let them. It was time to reclaim it. Determined, I made my way to the bank the next day. As I sat in the financial advisor's office, I explained my situation. I want to ensure that my assets are protected and I need to know where I stand financially, I said. Mr. Harris, the advisor, nodded sympathetically. We can definitely help with that. Let's review your accounts and see what we can do. As we delved into my finances, it became evident that I was the primary contributor to most of our investments and accounts. Mrs. Thompson, it appears that you've been the major breadwinner here. If you decide to divorce, you have a strong case for a significant portion of these assets, Mr. Harris explained. Divorce. The word felt heavy, yet in a strange way, liberating. Could I really take that step? When I returned home that day, Mark was waiting. Where were you? He asked, his voice dripping with suspicion. I went to the bank, I replied calmly. I needed to review our finances. His face paled. Why? Because, I began, taking a deep breath. I've decided to file for divorce, Mark. I can't be in a relationship where I'm constantly belittled and betrayed. Mark looked stunned. Jess, you're overreacting. We can work things out. I shook my head. No, Mark. This is my decision. I deserve better. And with that, I took the first step towards a new chapter in my life, one where my worth wasn't determined by anyone else but me. A few days later, I found myself seated in the office of a renowned attorney, Miss Angela Reynolds. Her reputation for handling difficult divorce cases was what drew me to her. As I relayed the events that led to my decision, Angela listened attentively. It's clear that you've been through a lot, Angela commented, jotting down some notes. I've handled cases like yours before, and I can tell you, standing up for yourself is the best decision you could make. I just want what's fair, I replied, looking out the window at the bustling city below. I've supported Mark and his family for so long. It's time for me to protect what's mine, I stated firmly. Angela nodded. You have a strong case, Jessica, especially given that you've been the primary contributor to your shared assets. I hesitated, then added, There's something else. I suspect Mark has been unfaithful. Angela looked up, her gaze sharp. Do you have any proof? A private investigator, I began, taking out a folder with photos and notes. I hired one months ago. The evidence is clear. Angela skimmed through the documents, her expression growing more serious with each page. This changes things considerably. With evidence of infidelity, the court is likely to view the case in your favor. Relief washed over me, but there was a gnawing feeling at the pit of my stomach. I had to confront Mark with the truth. That evening, I returned home to find Mark in the living room, surrounded by old photo albums, memories of better times. Jessica, he began, his voice shaky, I've been thinking maybe we can work things out. I placed the folder on the coffee table, the photos facing up. Mark's face drained of color as he recognized the woman in the photos. You've been cheating on me, I said calmly, my voice devoid of emotion. Mark's eyes darted between the photos and me. Jessica, it's not what it looks like. Save it. I cut him off. I've known for months, Mark. I just wanted to see if you'd ever come clean. His shoulders slumped in defeat. Why didn't you confront me sooner? He asked. I hoped you'd change, I replied, but instead you chose Sarah over me. You let her destroy our home, our trust. Tears streamed down Mark's face. I'm so sorry, Jessica. I never meant to hurt you. I shook my head. Sorry doesn't change what you did, Mark. It's over. And just like that, the weight that had been pressing on my chest lifted. It was a painful revelation, but one that set me on a path to reclaiming my life. In the weeks that followed, the legal process was a whirlwind. I felt like a regular at Angela's office, diving deep into the finances and property that Mark and I shared. Mark's actions not only severed our emotional connection, but also jeopardized our shared assets. The evidence of his infidelity and Sarah's destruction of my personal belongings were prominent factors in the proceedings. One morning, I received a call from Angela. Jessica, I've managed to get a court date. It's sooner than I expected, given the circumstances. That's great news, I replied, a fire igniting within me. I was ready to see this through. On the day of the hearing, the courtroom was filled with tension. Mark sat across from me, looking defeated and tired. Sarah was also present, her arrogant demeanor unchanged. The judge, a stern-looking woman with sharp features, looked through the files presented before her. It seems the evidence is quite clear, she said. Infidelity, financial misconduct, and deliberate destruction of property. I caught Mark's gaze, looking for any sign of remorse, but there was only emptiness. Sarah, on the other hand, was fidgeting nervously. Angela, clear and assertive, presented our case. Your Honor, my client has not only been the primary breadwinner, but has also financially supported Mr. Mark's parents and his niece, Sarah. She's been through emotional trauma and has lost personal belongings due to the actions of the defendants. Mark's lawyer tried to present their side, portraying Mark as a loving husband who was misled by Sarah, but the evidence was overwhelming. After what felt like hours, the judge gave her verdict. In light of the evidence presented and the actions of Mr. Mark and Miss Sarah, the court rules in favor of Miss Jessica. I exhaled deeply, feeling a wave of relief. It was a victory, not just legally, but also personally. I was reclaiming my life. Outside the courtroom, Sarah approached me, her bravado gone. Jessica, I'm sorry, she began, her voice quivering. I never thought things would go this far. Your actions have consequences, Sarah, I replied coldly. It's time you learned that. Mark tried to catch my attention, but I walked past him. There was no room for reconciliation. I had given him chances before, and he had thrown them away. It was time for both of us to face the outcomes of our choices. Retribution, it seemed, was finally mine. Spring's rejuvenating spirit mirrored the changes in my life. Gone were the gloomy days in the big, suffocating house. Now I enjoyed the city views from a modern apartment, a fresh start and a place of my own. My morning routine was interrupted by a call. An unfamiliar number flashed on the screen, but I had a hunch. Taking a deep breath, I answered. Jessica, it's me, Mark, he stammered. I stiffened. Why are you calling, Mark? His voice, a mix of desperation and hope, came through. Things have changed, Jessica. I realize now how wrong I was. Everything's fallen apart since you left. I was wondering... Get to the point, I said curtly. I need you, Jessica, he blurted out. Financially, everything's a disaster. Sarah took advantage of my bank accounts, ran up huge debts. We had to move in with my parents. They sold the house to cover her debts, and now we're all squeezed together, constantly fighting over money. A bitter smile formed on my lips. So, you're calling because you want help. Money? Not just that, he pleaded. I want you back, Jessica. I made a huge mistake. I took a moment, letting the gravity of the situation sink in. Mark, while I sympathize with your situation, you made your choices. I've moved on, and you need to find your own way now. Before he could respond, another voice piped up in the background. Auntie, Auntie, help me out just once. I promise I'll change. It was Sarah, her voice sounding very different from the arrogant and demanding tone I remembered. I sighed deeply. Sarah, I hope you find the path to change truly, but it's not my responsibility to fix the consequences of your actions. The call ended with a heavy silence. It was difficult hearing their desperation, but I knew I had to stand firm to rebuild myself. I had let go of the toxicity that once consumed me. There was no turning back. As the days turned into months, I immersed myself in my work, found joy in little things, and adopted a playful cat named Bella. Life had its challenges, but it also presented beautiful moments of growth and contentment. One evening, while reflecting on the past, I realized that despite the pain, those experiences shaped me into a stronger, wiser woman. I felt an inner peace, knowing that after every storm, a new dawn awaits. And as the sun set that day, I embraced my new life, grateful for the journey and the lessons it brought.
Oh, funeral preparations are tough, and my wife is so useless. What am I going to do? Really, it is tough, isn't it? What did she come here as a wife for? That day was my father-in-law's funeral. My husband and mother-in-law had not helped with any preparations and had left everything to me. However, as relatives began to gather, they slandered me, claiming all the work as their own achievement. Moreover, my husband's unbelievable actions continued even further. Hey, why are you trying to take out the condolence money? I couldn't help but reprimand him for his unreasonable behavior, to which he responded, "Shut up. It's none of your business. You're not family or anything, so don't butt in." What do you mean I'm not family? We are married. Tom and I got married 13 years ago. At that time, Tom, his parents, and our 3-year-old son were all kind to me. That's why I wanted to support him after marrying. However, after getting married, the four of us changed completely. Tom became extremely bossy. He decided on his own to live with his parents, who treated me like a maid and bullied me. Even my son, influenced by his father and grandparents, began to ridicule me. I endured such a life for 13 years. During my father-in-law's funeral, I was shocked by my husband's words and reached my limit. I did not attend the funeral and left a divorce paper, disappearing in front of them. The following day, there were as many as 203 missed calls from Tom. Listening to the messages in disbelief, I heard him panicking. "Hey, where are you now?" Then, I called my husband and began to fight back. I am Hillary, a 40-year-old housewife, working part-time at a nearby supermarket. My husband, Tom, works for a travel agency, and he has a son, Ryan, from a previous marriage. I married him 13 years ago. At that time, I wanted to support him as he was raising his 3-year-old son alone. Before marriage, I worked at a travel agency. 14 years ago, a male employee joined the company through mid-career recruitment. I'll be under your care from today. I look forward to working with you all. That man would later become my husband, but at the time, he seemed like a very refreshing man. Hillary, I heard from others that you are well versed in this job. Can you teach me? Of course, I'd be happy to. When you change jobs, The way things are done changes too, and I imagine that can be confusing. However, Tom was proactive in asking questions and worked hard to learn the job. Hillary, I'm free right now, so I'll take care of this task. Really? Thank you. That's a big help. Tom approached his job with a serious attitude, so he learned quickly. As he became proficient, his work speed increased, and he was able to help me with my tasks, which made me feel reassured about his reliability. Wow, Tom, you're raising a child on your own and working hard too? Isn't it tough? But I have to protect Ryan as a parent. I need to fulfill my responsibilities. You're kind, but make sure not to overdo it, okay? As he became accustomed to the work, we started having conversations beyond that, and I learned that he was a hard-working single father. Next holiday, I'm taking Ryan to the park. Hillary, would you like to join us? It'd give Ryan a taste of what having a mother might be like. Are you sure I'm okay for that? Absolutely. I think you're the best for it. If you say so, I'm happy to join. While we couldn't date alone because of his child, we deepened our relationship by going out together on holidays and having meals at his home. The food Mom makes is delicious. Oh, but calling me Mom makes me blush. I'm not your mom yet. Why don't you become his mom? I think Ryan needs a mother. Are you serious? While the three of us had a good time, Tom's words might have come out in such a natural way. Although it was a surprise to me, I was genuinely happy since I hoped that was the case. With pleasure, if it's okay with you. Thus, I decided to marry him and become Ryan's mother. This was 1 year after Tom joined the company. And upon marriage, I quit the travel agency to focus on home life. My parents had already died in an accident, and I had an older brother. At that time, my brother had already started his own business and was living abroad, so I couldn't tell him in person and informed him over the phone. You've met a good person. That's great. You definitely must be happy. Yeah, thank you. My brother gladly gave his blessings, and I was happy. After reporting to my brother, it was time to inform my in-laws, which was nerve-wracking, but Tom was reassuring. Don't be so nervous. They'll definitely accept you since I chose you. That makes me feel more confident. We entered my in-laws' home, and I met them face to face. I'm Hillary. I married Tom. Nice to meet you. Hello, Hillary. It's a relief you married our son. I have been thinking it's tough raising a child with only a father. Thank you so much. I was happy because my in-laws accepted the marriage smoothly as Tom had said. I'm happy to be with Mom forever now. Ryan said that, smiling innocently. Thus, I ended up with kind in-laws, a husband, and a sweet son. Looking back, that might have been the happiest moment for me. I was certain that a happy married life awaited me. But what awaited me was an unexpected turn of events. My husband, who had previously been kind, suddenly changed. Hey, make sure you iron my shirts by tomorrow morning. Okay, I understand. Also, I'll be home by 7 p.m. tomorrow, so make sure that freshly made dinner is ready. He started to act like a lord of the house, giving orders more frequently. I thought, do men change after getting married? While I thought I could still endure this level of change, one day, my husband said something outrageous. Hey, I've just arranged for us to live with my parents. What? I wasn't informed about living together. Why should I need your permission? I'm the head of the family. Do you understand? I do, but suddenly, he had even decided that we would live with his parents. I was confused and returned his words, but his arrogant attitude left no room for rebuttal. Besides, Ryan is happy about living with his grandparents, so you can't disregard his feelings. When he mentioned our son, I couldn't argue back, and I reluctantly accepted living with my in-laws. But it wasn't just my husband who had changed. My in-laws were the same. Since Hillary is living with us, you can take it easy now. Yes, I'll do that. Hillary, I'm leaving the household chores to you. Yes, I understand. I thought I would be sharing household duties with my mother-in-law, but instead, all chores were assigned to me. As long as you live here, you must listen to us. If you defy us, we'll tell Tom. Whatever you say, Tom will always believe us, you know. Under this pressure, I struggled with the household duties. What's with this seasoning? Have you been serving this to Tom and Ryan all this time? But both of them have never complained about the taste before. They were just being considerate of you. You should realize that. Criticism of my household duties wasn't limited to cooking. What's with this way of folding clothes? And look, there's still dust here. Did you really clean? I did clean as best as I could. No matter what I did, it was never good enough, and I lived under constant criticism, being bullied as an incompetent wife for 13 years. During that time, my mother-in-law never helped with the chores even once. Saying I was treated like a maid would not be an exaggeration. Unable to endure such a life, I thought about divorce several times. However, what kept me from it was my son. I thought, I must fulfill my role as a parent until Ryan becomes an adult. That thought kept me from divorcing, despite the endurance. However, I was painfully aware of the bad influence my husband and in-laws' attitudes had on my son when an incident occurred. Why can't Mom do anything right? What? Ryan, what's suddenly gotten into you? Grandpa and Grandma said so. It's really pathetic. You should be more responsible as a parent. Ryan, how can you say such things to your parent? I couldn't believe that my once sincere and adorable son could say such things. I was not only shocked by his change, but also I was already dealing with another issue at that time, which was the health of my father-in-law. In fact, a few years ago, my father-in-law became ill and needed care. Hey, I'm the head of the family, and Mom is getting old. You know what to do about Dad, right? Are you implying that? Exactly that. You take care of him. But I'm already busy with part-time work and household chores. Can't you help a little? However, Tom responded angrily. Shut up. Don't argue with me. I'm the one earning the money that keeps us living. I thought, that's a terrible thing to say. I thought it was useless to say anything more. My husband's attitude was the worst. With this background, I continued my life juggling part-time work, household chores, and caregiving alone. As a result, my body became worn out, and I lost even the energy and margin to think about divorcing. Then, my father-in-law fell ill again and passed away. Oh, funeral preparations are tough. Hey, Hillary, you take care of everything. Yes, as a daughter-in-law, it's only natural for you to do that. Understood. I had a feeling it would turn out this way, but sure enough, my husband and mother-in-law left all the funeral preparations to me. What was worse was what happened next. When the relatives who attended expressed their condolences for the sudden loss, they praised my husband and mother-in-law for managing the funeral, and the two acted as if they had handled all the arrangements. Well, it couldn't be helped, but I didn't think arranging a funeral would be so hard. Yes, it was a big help that Tom worked together with me. While some voices did commend me as a good daughter-in-law, the two slandered and mocked me. Oh, that one is no good. She's a useless wife who can't even handle this. She could at least be useful at a time like this. Hearing and seeing that, even the relatives were appalled. I thought, why have I tried so hard up to this point? Despite having devotedly served my husband and mother-in-law as they demanded, it was all unrewarded. I was truly disgusted with the situation. My husband's shocking behavior continued. Tom, what are you doing? What? Don't raise your voice. It's annoying. It's not just annoying. Why are you trying to take out the condolence money? I never thought he would do something so unreasonable. While I was stunned, I couldn't ignore such behavior, so I had to call him out. Shut up. It's none of your business, so stay out of it. You're not family, so don't interfere. What do you mean I'm not family? We're married. I couldn't believe what he said. I had been treated like a maid by my in-laws, but to think that my husband also saw me that way, despite being his wife, which means I am family, the fact that he didn't recognize that was shocking. So you say such things. I've had enough. At this point, continuing to endure seemed foolish, so I decided not to attend my father-in-law's funeral and returned home. I packed my bags, left a divorce paper, and went to a certain person's place. The following day, I checked my phone and thought, wow, what is this? I saw a history of missed calls from my husband. There were as many as 203. Not only had he left a history of calls, but also messages. As I listened, shocked, I heard, "Hey, Hillary, where the heck are you?" His voice sounded frantic and panicky. "The funeral is about to start. It's bad. Come back quickly." Despite his previous arrogance, it seemed he couldn't manage anything without me. Reluctantly, I called my husband, who seemed to have been waiting so eagerly. He picked up the phone promptly. "Finally, you decided to call. Hey, why didn't you attend the funeral?" "Why? You should ask yourself that. You're insolent for a wife. I won't forgive you for embarrassing me. Wasn't it fine without me?" My brother attended in my place. Indeed, my brother had attended the funeral in my place. As I mentioned this, my husband became even more flustered. That was the problem. "You must have badmouthed us to your brother." "Not at all. I only spoke the truth." "I knew it. And your brother discussed it in front of the relatives. Thanks to that, both Mom and I were reproached by everyone." "That's your own doing." If the relatives had any sense, they would naturally be upset knowing what my husband and mother-in-law had done. I really can't understand why they don't see that. Not only had they caused a commotion at the funeral, but what added insult to injury was what happened after they returned. When we got back from the funeral, there was a divorce paper. Are you serious about this? Yes, I'm serious. Of course, I answered clearly, showing my strong intention to divorce. Don't joke. I will never allow a divorce. You just need to shut up and listen to me. Even after all this, he said such things. It felt like he was completely oblivious to the reasons for the divorce and truly beyond help. I'm done being at the mercy of you and your mother. I won't be coming back. What did you say? Make sure to fill out the divorce papers properly. Bye. I firmly told my husband this and hung up the phone. A week passed. There had been no contact from my husband, and I had been living peacefully when suddenly my mother-in-law called. Hillary, what on earth is going on? Mother, what brings you to call all of a sudden? It's not all of a sudden. Why do we have to be kicked out of the house? Oh, is that what this is about? What do you mean by that? Her call was to find out why they had been kicked out of the house. But there was a reason I could stay calm. Because that house originally belonged to my parents, and now it's under my brother's name. What are you talking about? In fact, the house we had been living in was one my brother had lent to me. My husband and in-laws had misunderstood, thinking it was a house that I had inherited from my parents. That's why they thought they could live there, as if it was their own. This situation dates back to when my father-in-law died. When I informed my brother about the funeral, he was still abroad. But when I mentioned the funeral, he said he would come back and attend. We met for the first time in years before the funeral. Hillary, are you okay? You look so worn out. What happened? Well, actually, it had been years since I had seen my brother, but he was shocked at how different I looked. Concerned, he approached me, and I honestly explained everything that had happened. What a thing to say. I won't forgive anyone who hurts my dear sister. His expression was stern, and he clenched his fists, shaking with anger. Hillary, don't worry. I'll take care of it. Thank you. Thus, with my brother's support, I was able to firm up my decision to divorce my husband. Now, get back to the present. I was talking with my mother-in-law on the phone, and I decided to reveal a certain fact. I've decided to live near my brother from now on. What? As I said this, my mother-in-law sounded shocked. It seemed that Tom was nearby, and taking over from the silent mother-in-law, he spoke up. Hillary, don't say things like that. Let's start over. I'm reflecting on it all. What are you saying all of a sudden? It's absurd. I can't even consider getting back together with you. I'm serious. I'm your husband, after all. Can't you trust what your husband says? What made him think he could be trusted after all the trust-destroying actions he had taken? Moreover, the situation had changed since before, and I decided to tell him about it. Listen, Tom. Another reason it's impossible to get back together is that I'm not in the US right now. What? What do you mean? As I spoke coldly, Tom anxiously asked for clarification. Do you think my brother is permanently back in the US to live? Isn't that what it means when you say you're going to live near your brother? He had interpreted it that way, thinking according to his convenience without being told anything. I was really astonished at his way of thinking. I've changed my nationality and moved to Cancun. Huh? You moved to Cancun? Yes, that's right. My brother is in the US only temporarily. He didn't come back to live here permanently. No way. As I spoke, Tom sounded surprised and shocked. There was no longer any reason to continue the conversation with him. I decided to tell him one last thing. Right now, my brother is staying in the US to handle various procedures, so please ask him about anything else. After saying that, I ended the conversation and hung up. Later, I was able to hear from my brother about Tom. He did enough to deserve a divorce, yet he hesitated to sign the divorce papers. I wondered how stubborn he could be. Really? But in the end, did he sign the divorce papers? He wouldn't have signed them if it were just up to me to convince him. I had no choice but to involve a lawyer. The lawyer you hired was very competent, wasn't he? That makes me feel relieved. As I asked, my brother nodded and told me that everything had smoothly progressed, with the divorce papers signed. Then my brother sold our family home. When asked where the three of them ended up after losing their home, the response was like this. After I sold the family home, they had nowhere to live. Now, they're living in a rundown apartment, all three of them. Wow, that's tragic, but it's really just a case of reaping what they sowed. While it seemed tragic to hear about their situation, there was no room for sympathy. If they had remained as kind as they were before the marriage, things would not have ended this way. Ryan could have grown up properly too. It's too late to say such things now, but it's good that you had been recording videos on your smartphone and writing diaries. I really wished they would have reformed without my having to do such things. But maybe they would never have changed regardless. At least, that's what I think. After all, they have caused you so much suffering. What you did was hardly a punishment. True to my brother's words, I had been writing in a diary and secretly recording videos on my smartphone about the things my husband and in-laws did to me. When I submitted these as evidence to the lawyer, they were acknowledged as powerful evidence. As a result, I succeeded in obtaining compensation from my husband and mother-in-law. After that, peaceful days returned to me. I have started working again at a travel agency in Cancun, introduced by my brother. I endured a lot of hardships in the past, but from now on, I want to cherish myself more and lead a joyful and happy life.
You'll be fine going to the hospital alone, right? I swear I'll send you straight to hell. My name is Lisa, and I'm currently 9 months pregnant. It's my first time giving birth, so while I'm filled with anxiety, I feel truly blessed about welcoming a new member into our family. My husband, David, is a white-collar worker and has weekends off. However, he doesn't offer much support around the house or help with shopping. This is because he usually goes back to his parents' home on weekends. David has a deep bond with his in-laws, and since their home is nearby, he spends almost every weekend there without any specific reason. Since becoming pregnant, I've been cautious about lifting heavy objects. For instance, when buying heavy items like rice, understanding friends often help out. My daily routine starts by waking up early, preparing breakfast for David, and seeing him off to work. Afterward, I do the cleaning and laundry and then head out for any necessary shopping. Once I return home, I start prepping for dinner. Only after finishing these tasks can I finally have some relaxation time. Since taking maternity leave, I've taken up a new hobby, blogging. Every day, I write a diary accompanied by photos I take, such as meals, the blue sky, flowers blooming in the garden, and more. Many friends and acquaintances leave comments, and these moments of journaling have become small daily joys for me. One evening, as I was preparing dinner, my husband returned home as usual. He carelessly placed his bag and jacket on the sofa, and I tidied them up, hanging them on a coat hanger. "Welcome back," I said, responding curtly. He headed straight for the bathroom. 3 years have passed since we got married, and there has been little kindness or consideration from him. I occasionally wonder if this is truly what a marital relationship should be like, but I've resigned myself to it. When David returned in his pajamas, I handed him a drink. "Where's the beer?" he asked, glancing at the bar. "Sorry, I forgot to buy it today. I'll get some tomorrow." "Seriously, go to the convenience store now." His demeanor changed immediately, and he spoke with evident anger. I was irritated. Why was he asking his pregnant wife to do this? "If you want it so badly, why don't you go get it yourself? It's hard for me to move around with this big belly." At that moment, he became even angrier and started shouting, "You're the one who forgot to buy it. It's your job to fix that mistake. Just because you're pregnant doesn't mean you get special treatment. My mother always said it's important to keep moving for the sake of health." Knowing that he doesn't calm down easily when he's angry, I reluctantly decided to go to the convenience store. Once I arrived, I bumped into Sarah, a neighbor. "Oh, Sarah, good evening." "Good evening, Lisa. Did you forget to buy something too?" "I ran out of sauce as I came here." Sarah's cheerful voice slightly lifted my spirits. "My husband really wanted beer and he told me to buy it. Why didn't he just go himself?" That's what I said, but it didn't get through to him. "It sounds like you're having a tough time, Lisa." After walking together for a bit, Sarah and I parted ways at a crossroad. When I returned home, David was lounging on the sofa, watching TV, having not even cleaned up after dinner. "Why did it take you so long? What were you doing? Lollygagging around for? Give me the beer." David's disgruntled voice and his insensitive remarks made my heart ache. However, I handed him the beer without a word and began cleaning up after the meal. How could he say such things to me, especially when I'm pregnant? I felt the urge to retort, but I didn't want another shouting match, so I remained silent. Afterward, I had my dinner, took a relaxing bath, and headed to the bedroom. The next morning, David acted as if nothing had happened. It seems he's the type to forget everything after a good night's sleep. However, I couldn't forget his words from the previous night, and I consciously ignored him. "Why are you making that face so early in the morning? Don't take it out on me. I'm heading to work now, so be a bit considerate. You know the importance of appreciation, right?" Due to what he said, I was filled with the urge to retort. "That applies to you, doesn't it?" But out of shock and disbelief, all I could do was sigh deeply and see him off. "Be careful, right? I want dinner tonight. See you." Without any explanation, David left in a hurry. After seeing him off, I took care of household chores and went shopping as usual. However, since David mentioned he wouldn't be having dinner, I decided to prepare something simple just for myself. Then, as I was about to start my meal alone in the evening, I heard David's unexpected return and rushed to the entrance. "I'm back. Thanks for your hard work," he said. "But you said you didn't need dinner today, right?" "Yeah, but my drinking party got cancelled. I'm hungry. You have something to eat, right?" "Well, I only prepared a meal for myself today," I replied. Upon hearing this, David's face contorted with anger. "Didn't you even consider the possibility I might come back? This is unbelievable," he said, moving to the dining table. Upon seeing the dinner I prepared, his mood worsened. "What do you call this, a meal? I seriously question if you're properly doing your duties as a housewife. Don't waste the money I'm working for." I quickly prepared something for myself. Please don't get mad like this. Maybe you should learn proper cooking from my mom. Honestly, I've always found your cooking lacking. Again, he always compares me to his mother. Doesn't he realize how hurtful these comparisons can be? I can't eat this. Go buy something, he said. My heart sank further. What does he think of me? It's already night, and I've taken a bath. Can't you go buy it yourself? Forget it. You forgot to buy beer yesterday, didn't prepare dinner today. It's so frustrating. David stormed out, leaving me alone in the house. I strangely felt a sense of relief. The next morning, as I expected, I received an angry call from David's mother. How can you not serve David a proper meal? This feels like moral harassment, if not worse. I explained what happened yesterday, but she wasn't accepting it. So I apologized and ended the call. After the call, my mood plummeted. Since David wasn't home, I decided to have a leisurely late brunch. However, the thought of David coming back tonight weighed on my mind. Considering yesterday's events, I decided to make tonight's dinner special. I shopped with more care than usual, picking out ingredients and adding David's favorite beer to the cart. I was determined to prepare a dinner that would earn David's praise. I shortened my blog update time a bit to allocate more time to cooking. After dedicating ample time to preparations, the table was set beautifully, as if it was a special occasion. Looking at it, I felt a sense of accomplishment and couldn't help but praise myself. With this, he should definitely be satisfied. I waited patiently in the dining room for David to come home, but as time passed, there was no sign of him. I tried contacting him several times via my smartphone, but there was no response, and I became more worried as the clock continued to tick. 1 hour, then 2 hours passed, and I began to get anxious. Did he possibly go to his parents' house? Thinking this, I called David's parents to check, but they said he hadn't come there either. As midnight approached, just when I was considering contacting the police, a staggering David returned home. He seemed clearly drunk. "I'm home," he mumbled. I rushed to the entrance in concern and found David lying on the hallway floor. "What happened? Are you okay?" I asked. But hearing my voice, he responded angrily, "Too loud. Go away." He then staggered towards the dining room. When I tried to support him, he forcibly shook off my hand. "Don't touch me. Don't come near me with that ugly face. To think you're my wife." In his drunken state, he spat out those words and then just lay down right there. Those words were beyond shocking. Why? Why can't he consider others' feelings? His remarks hurt me deeply, and I was filled with thoughts of maybe he no longer sees me as family. Tears welled up in my eyes. I put so much effort into cooking, it was all for nothing. With that thought, I had my dinner alone, enveloped in loneliness. The next morning, David woke up as if nothing had happened. "My head hurts. I guess I drank too much," he said. "But why did you leave me in the hallway? You chose to lie down there, David. It's not my fault. Aren't you my wife? At least take care of me when I'm drunk." David's words made me wonder why he always blames me right away. If you weren't going to eat at home, you could have at least let me know. I have prepared a nice meal, and I called you multiple times. Why didn't you answer? David replied nully. My drinking party from the day before got rescheduled to yesterday. Do I have to report everything? Besides, you know how hard it is to pick up the phone during a gathering? Think about my situation. With every word David said, my heart got colder, and my expectations of him diminished. That way, I won't feel hurt or disappointed anymore. This thought lingered in my mind. I'm taking a break and going back to my parents' home tomorrow. Being with you lately feels unpleasant and boring. Seeing David's attitude of looking down on me made me increasingly consider the option of divorce. Our baby is due soon, and my heart races in anticipation. Even though I've heard stories about the pains of labor from friends, my excitement to meet the new life inside me overshadows those concerns. The neighbors often encourage me with words like, "It's just a little while longer," which brightens my mood. "Hey, want to go on a family trip?" Soon after David returned home, he made a surprising suggestion. Really? I asked. But I'm talking about a family trip. My mom and dad want to join. I was taken aback. Why would parents make such a proposal? Tensions exist between me and David's parents. Whenever there's an issue concerning David, they tend to blame me, like the previous phone call incident. However, the sudden idea of a trip left me doubtful. I'm about to give birth soon, and traveling a long distance might be a bit risky, I said. How many times do I have to tell you? Just because you're pregnant doesn't mean you're sick. My parents are thoughtfully inviting us. But what if something happens? It'll be fine. Everything's already decided. We'll go for 2 nights and 3 days next week. Next week is my due date. That's a bit... Just do as you're told. Prepare for the trip. End of discussion, David said, expressing his opinion and then leaving the room. I'm in trouble now, I thought to myself. Then, the next day, I sought advice from a close friend and explained the situation. She was concerned and said, "That's a bit too much." While I was contemplating how to decline the offer, the day of the trip suddenly arrived. Actually, I'm not feeling well today. I'm worried about the baby, so I'm going to rest at home. I tried to use that as an excuse, but David didn't seem convinced. Anyway, you can just rest in the car and you'll be fine, right? Come on, bring a luggage. We're heading to my parents' house, so hurry up. As we headed to the car, I was worried and asked, "Is this really okay?" After loading our luggage into the car and sitting in the passenger seat, I felt warmth at my feet. Looking down, I noticed water spreading around them. "Oh my water broke," I immediately informed David. "David, I think my water just broke. Please take me to the hospital quickly." Taken aback by the situation, David exclaimed, "Are you serious?" "Yes, I'm serious. We need to go to the hospital now. The baby might be coming." While trying to clean up the water with a towel in the car, David suddenly opened the passenger door. "David, what are you doing? We need to go to the hospital. Get out. You're going to make a mess in the car." I was in complete shock. "What are you saying?" I said, "Get out. I need to clean the car." Then David forcefully pulled me out of the car. In this unbelievable situation, David said, "I can't believe this. We were supposed to be on a family trip. Just go to the hospital by yourself." I was too shocked to say anything as I called out to David, "Wait, how can you leave me here like this?" He drove away, leaving me behind. Feeling overwhelmed, I quickly dialed for an ambulance. When someone approached asking, "Lisa, are you okay?" It was Sarah, looking concerned. Sarah immediately recognized my predicament and arranged for a special taxi, comforting me throughout. Grateful for her kindness, tears streamed down my face. Soon after, I safely arrived at the hospital, thanks to Sarah's help. On the way, she held my hand and cheered me up, staying by my side until I was taken to my room. While being transferred, I made a silent vow. I will make him pay for this. Even as labor pains grew, Sarah kept holding my hand. Furthermore, she contacted my parents, who soon arrived at the hospital and looked deeply concerned. Sarah whispered to them, "There's something I want to discuss," then left the room. As the labor pains intensified, my smartphone vibrated from a corner of the room. "Who is it?" I asked, and my parents responded with David's name. They looked displeased, but I took the call anyway. As soon as I answered, I heard a panicky David, "Help me." However, I was in no state or mood to converse with him and promptly ended the call. Despite my parents turning off my phone, David continued to send messages. As labor intensified, I was finally moved to the delivery room. After enduring the pain for some time, I finally heard my baby's cries. Exhausted, I saw my parents and Sarah standing before me with warm smiles, relieved. I closed my eyes and rested. When I woke up after a few hours of sleep, I found myself lying in the hospital bed. Rubbing my eyes, I noticed my parents sitting next to me, their faces filled with concern. "Are you okay?" my mother asked gently. Still feeling the weight of exhaustion, I couldn't muster the energy to sit up, while my father looked teary-eyed. My mother consoled him, saying, "The postpartum period can be exhausting." Witnessing this heartwarming scene, a smile formed on my face. "How's the baby?" I inquired. My parents informed me that the baby was undergoing some tests but would be back in the room soon. However, I noticed Sarah wasn't present. Responding to my unspoken question, my mother remarked, "Sarah left a little while ago." Thinking about how things might have turned out had Sarah not been there, a feeling of gratitude settled over me. I made a promise with my parents that after being discharged, I would visit Sarah to express my gratitude. Turning on my smartphone to inform my friends about the birth, I was met with an overwhelming number of missed calls, mostly from David. The sheer number left me momentarily stunned, but I felt no hope or expectation from his calls, so I closed the notifications without hesitation. One of my friends visited the hospital room to congratulate me on the birth. As she rejoiced and extended her genuine wishes, I opened up about the recent incidents with David. After hearing the story, she expressed both shock and anger, half-jokingly saying she'd like to punish him a bit, but she also emphasized that my health and rest were paramount. She chatted with me for a while and then left. My parents, already briefed by Sarah about the whole episode, asked, "What are you planning to do next?" I shared my thoughts about my relationship with David and told my parents, "I'm considering divorce." They respected my decision and provided their support. Upon my discharge, I planned to stay at my parents' house, where they had prepared a room for me. Meanwhile, David seemed to have visited the hospital, but as I had informed the hospital staff that I didn't wish to see him, he wasn't allowed in. The next day, Sarah came to my hospital room holding a fruit basket. "Sarah, you came," I exclaimed with delight. "You seem to be recovering well, but remember not to overexert yourself. Postpartum fatigue can be quite profound," she advised, feeling comforted by Sarah's words. I sighed with relief, taking the fruit basket from her. "Sarah, thank you so much for helping me. I don't know what would have happened if you weren't there." I expressed my deep gratitude as I bowed deeply. Sarah gently laughed, saying, "What's most important is that both you and the baby are healthy. I just want a small hand. Regardless, I'm forever grateful. Once things settle down, I'll come over to thank you properly." Sarah laughed warmly in response. "You know, I've talked to my husband about what happened. He seemed quite furious." From her words, I could somewhat deduce David's situation. "Sarah, I'm truly sorry for dragging you into this mess," I admitted. "Don't worry, remember who you owe for being able to work at your current company." This incident is truly hard to forget. At that moment, I heard a stern tone in Sarah's voice for the first time. Sarah was actually the wife of the CEO at the company where my husband worked. When we first moved to this residential area, I had no idea about this fact. However, as we frequently encountered each other at the local supermarket shops and occasionally at convenience stores, we gradually became closer. We even began to enjoy tea together, and during these sessions, I learned about the nature of her husband's job. On the other hand, my husband was completely unaware of this background. This was because he didn't even accompany me for our initial neighborhood greetings and didn't prefer interacting with our neighbors. Sarah had previously told me gently, "I don't want to cause any trouble, so don't tell your husband," and I had respected that request. Knowing that I was pregnant and still being forced to endure my husband's unreasonable behavior, Sarah had several times suggested, "Should I talk to my husband about this?" However, I had always declined, not wanting to trouble her. But with this recent incident, perhaps even Sarah reached her limit. That's why my husband kept calling. "Sarah, I really can't thank you enough for everything." Sarah's strong words made me realize how fortunate I was to have someone who'd go to such lengths for me. I couldn't help but tear up. Seeing my reaction, Sarah once again gave me a warm smile. "Lisa, you're a dear friend to me. I can't just stand by and watch when something like this happens to a friend." Our conversation was filled with heartfelt smiles. However, my husband's messages didn't stop, despite the barrage of notifications online. I consciously ignored them all. Thinking about the divorce made my mind clear. and all I wanted was to think about how to live my life with my baby. As I was preparing to leave the hospital, a close friend visited my room, handing me her smartphone and saying, "I want you to see this." Displayed on her phone was a post that had become a major topic on a certain social media platform. When I asked what it was about, she informed me that she had posted about my husband's recent actions on social media. My friend had a significant influence on social media, with a massive follower count. One day, she received a reply to one of her posts. The follower who replied had, by chance, captured a video of the scene where I was yelled at by my husband after being let out of the car. The follower, wanting to protect my privacy, blurred my face in the video and, with my friend's permission, shared it online. The video spread like wildfire, and as a result, personal details about my husband and even his company were identified. Currently, my husband seems to be under a barrage of criticism online. What? I had no idea it had escalated to this level. My friend, smiling gently, remarked, "Well, they brought it upon themselves, didn't they? My husband's actions and their consequences were all a result of choices he made." Furthermore, when one of my husband's friends confronted him about the incident, he reportedly excused himself, saying, "I had a prior travel commitment with my parents that day, so I had no choice." Because of the statement, not only my husband but also his parents began to face criticism online. The story spread even in the vicinity of my in-laws' home, and there seemed to be various topics related to my husband's parents circulating on social media. Suddenly, my phone started ringing. When I checked the screen, it was a call from my mother-in-law. That's for my mother-in-law, my friend. I stared at the screen of my phone with interest. "Why don't you pick up and give her a piece of your mind?" suggested my friend. However, I was so fed up that I felt no words to do so and decided to ignore it. Before I knew it, the missed calls log was filled with names of my husband, father-in-law, and mother-in-law. Ever since the incident was highlighted on social media, even the hospital staff seemed to be aware of my situation and started offering genuine support. Whether my husband or in-laws came to the hospital or called multiple times, the hospital staff didn't allow any contact with me. As my discharge date approached, I had one pressing worry: whether my husband and in-laws might be lurking outside the hospital. My parents reassured me, saying, "You have nothing to worry about," but the thought of my precious baby being in danger left me anxious. However, that concern was quickly dispelled on the day of my discharge. As my parents were helping me with my belongings, I heard my husband's voice shouting, "Lisa," followed by the loud voices of my in-laws. Suddenly, men in black suits surrounded me, forming a protective barrier. As I tried to understand what was happening, one of the men approached me, gently opening the car door and said, "Don't worry, we're here on Sir's request to protect you." It seemed my parents were already aware of this, as my mom said, smiling, "Didn't I tell you? There's nothing to worry about." Believing her words, I felt relieved and smoothly got into the car. All the while my husband and in-laws, overwhelmed by the presence of the bodyguards, couldn't come any closer. I can't find the words to express how grateful I am for Sarah supporting me like this. The only thing occupying my mind was how to reciprocate Sarah's kindness. My parents felt the same, saying in unison, "We have to find a way to show our gratitude to Sarah." Although my new life began smoothly and pleasant days continued, the contacts from my husband and in-laws never ceased. I mailed them the divorce papers, but there wasn't even a hint of acceptance. One day, my in-laws called our home. It seems my father answered, and they addressed him with the attitude of, "She became a part of our family, so no matter how she's treated, she shouldn't complain." When my father angrily retorted to their statement, it seems they were taken aback and quickly hung up. While discussing how to handle this with my parents, I decided that seeking professional assistance was the best course of action and resolved to consult the lawyer. Coincidentally, my father was acquainted with a lawyer, and when we explained our situation, he graciously promised to help. I informed the lawyer about the video circulating on social media and detailed past events. When the lawyer reached out on our behalf, my husband was initially taken aback. However, over time, he became defiant. "We'll solve marital issues ourselves. We don't need a lawyer," he argued in a flustered tone. However, the lawyer calmly responded, "I'm acting upon Lisa's request. Any future communication should be directed to me. It's up to Lisa, my client, to decide whether or not she wants to involve a lawyer." My husband was at a loss for words. Though initially refusing to divorce, when mediation and the possibility of a court case were suggested, the word court seemed to shake him and he reluctantly agreed to the divorce. "I have no interest in the child and have no intention of seeing them in the future, so I don't see why I should pay child support. As for property distribution, I did nothing wrong," he claimed irrationally. The lawyer calmly explained from a legal perspective, but my husband still seemed unconvinced. "In that case, it seems we'll meet in court," the lawyer suggested. My in-laws, who were listening nearby, appeared to panic and immediately agreed. When I was informed of this by the lawyer, I was shocked that I had ever married such a man. I had been communicating with Sarah since returning to my parents' home, and when I told her about the recent events, she playfully and gleefully suggested, "How about seizing your ex-husband's retirement pay? Garnishment is one way, right?" Feeling overwhelmed by Sarah's astuteness, a while later, I was contacted by the lawyer, who conveyed that my husband wished to apologize in person. Wanting a satisfactory conclusion, I agreed to converse over the phone under the supervision of the lawyer. The day of the scheduled call arrived. On that day, I was accompanied by my parents and the lawyer. From the other end of the line I heard, "Finally, you answer. Apologize now and I'll forgive you. So come back home. Let's be a couple again. The house is a mess. I might lose my job and everyone's looking at me coldly. All of this is your fault, so take responsibility." He continued to bombard me with accusations. Without being overwhelmed, I calmly chose how to react. When he said, "See, you can't even reply properly. Truly a woman with no redeeming qualities," I finally responded. "Just so you know, this conversation is being recorded. I'll keep it as evidence. Goodbye." Hearing this, my husband's voice revealed his shock. "Wait, you recorded it? That's not fair, right?" I was joking. "I'm sorry. I can't live without you. Let's start over. We truly loved each other, right? I promise I'll try harder from now on." After hearing those words, I immediately hung up the phone. With the recorded David in hand, I handed it to the lawyer and asked, "Can you utilize this audio as evidence?" Shaking his head in disbelief, the lawyer remarked, "He truly is an incorrigible man." My parents, feeling the same as me, have firmly decided to sever ties with him. Seeing his behavior filled them more with astonishment and disappointment than anger. At some point, I realized I was slightly enjoying this drama, clinging to the little devilish side of me that emerged. The divorce procedures with my husband concluded smoothly. Both the property distribution and child support agreements went forward without a hitch, and the turmoil began to subside. Due to the information Sarah shared with her husband, the president of my ex-husband's company, he was promptly disciplined. The president, known for his family-oriented values, believed that an employee who couldn't protect his family couldn't be trusted by the company. David lost his job, couldn't make housing loan payments, and returned to his parents' home. His reputation was tarnished by the viral video, and he struggled to find stable employment, barely making ends meet with short-term part-time jobs. Rumors spread about his parents, too, and according to reports from Sir friends in the neighborhood, they seemed to live in perpetual unease. The cold societal judgment they faced, which exceeded my expectations, made me think that, surprisingly, this ostracization might be harder for them than any legal repercussions. With most matters settled and my health recovering, my parents, my baby, and I visited Sarah's home to express our gratitude. Both Sarah and her husband seemed genuinely happy and doted on my baby, making us feel warm and welcomed. After that, Sarah and my mother became close friends. Similarly, Sarah's husband and my father got along very well, and our families grew close. Furthermore, Sarah and her husband's son was around my age, and to everyone's surprise, our relationship began to develop in an unexpected direction. A few years later, the idea that I might actually become a part of Sarah's family was something no one could have ever predicted. Life truly is full of surprises.